Welcome to Taking the High Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, primarily around the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the 50 years as the host of this show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. Throughout the year, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, just email Jeremy at takingthehighroad.com. Now, this week, I'm honored to be joined by a great industry friend who's not only fun and super easy to get along with, he's also a serial entrepreneur who's disrupting a space that's starving for innovation. Mats Holmbäck, co-founder and CEO of driver recruiting technology solution, Lanefinder. Thank you so much for joining me, Mats.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
I'm really anxious to dive into your background, as you have a wealth of recruiting technology experience all around the world, actually. And I'd love to learn more about your most recent venture, the innovative and intuitive recruiting solution that is Lanefinder. Perhaps you can share with the audience your plans to grow and expand, as well as discuss how you're able to manage versus the just the ever-evolving technology landscape. And I'd also love to hear about your experience with the industry since moving to the U.S. Does that sound like a good plan of attack for today?
I've never heard such a good plan of attack for today.
There couldn't be better. I'm going to mix this up a little bit. So normally I ask my guests about a favorite book that they'd like to recommend to the audience, and I'm still going to ask that, but I'm going to wrap it up at the end with that question instead. So now I'm giving you plenty of time to sort of think about it, and I expect a good recommendation. All right. But before we get there, I mentioned that you have a lot of recruiting technology experience. You've been building and growing companies for years. Could you share with the audience just about your background before planting your roots in the U.S. and getting into the trucking industry?
I'm actually originally from Austin, Texas. And when I was about 5-6 years old, somewhere around there, a decision was made. And that decision was to move halfway around the world. So my roots were planted in Sweden, of all places. So I'm used to the snow. Since then, I've moved back here. My background has always been around entrepreneurship. I have actually the classic stories of trying to sell my drawings to, local businesses as a 7-year-old, all the way up to selling windmills in my early 20s, had a company doing that. And so the rest is history.
How did you get into building technology then? Help connect the dots there.
All right. After I was doing that windmill business, I had a dream about, making the environment better. And what better than having every farm self-sufficient on energy? But I have to tell you, there was a lot of headwind just from a politics standpoint. And
which is great for windmills, by the way, right? Headwind?
Yeah, great for that. It's an old joke I used to tell. I had a friend of mine who said, well, you know what? You'd be great in the recruiting industry. I said, why? I don't have a background in that. But about a year later, I got into working at a big staffing company called Randstad today. They're here in the U.S. as well, massive company. But they were reading resumes on paper. And so me and my co-founder, we decided, let's bring out some personality in these job applications. So we actually got started as a video resume tool almost about 13, 14 years ago now.
That's what got you into technology, though.
That's what got us into technology. Yes, it was looking at, the way that things were done, saying, wow, we can make this a lot more efficient. So then you come out with a small product and you test it, you kind of get that first initial user feedback. And, once we got our first beta version way back when in the hands of some users, we were just so excited. Once you've done that, you can never look back. It's just improving and becoming fanatical about improving.
I think you made an important point. And obviously with not having this background, it's pretty incredible that you understood the power of iteration and getting feedback to help drive that, which when you approach it from that perspective, that's a sign of success, or usually success looking backwards. That was a foundational, part of it. How did your path lead you to the U.S. trucking industry then?
The product, quickly morphed from a video resume tool into a full-fledged applicant tracking system. Now, we weren't in the trucking industry at the time, so we were trying to help small, medium-sized businesses recruit better. And for those who don't know what an applicant tracking system is, it's basically a piece of software that companies use in order to post jobs to various job sites, And then it helps you manage those applications. Around 2019, at that time, we were in many different countries, many different industry verticals. And there was one group in particular that was standing out, and that was third-party truck driver recruiters. And so they started sending off hundreds and thousands of job ads out to our partners at the time, which were the main job boards out there. And one day, the biggest one called me, upper management. Big honcho gives me a call and says, Mats, you know what? These job ads that are coming out of your platform right now, out of this particular platform, they're not up to our standards. We're going to have to take a look at these job ads. And so it didn't take us long to try to get out of the trucking industry because we didn't understand it at the time. But I had a phone call from a guy named Ray. He called me up and he said, you know what? My entire business is running off of your software, which piqued my interest, obviously. So, I came over. He happened to be here in Florida. We met up, and that's when he started explaining all these intricacies. Out of the 40 different countries I've been blessed to have worked in and seeing companies in different industries, I can say by far, for a company to recruit and hire for, the trucking industry is by far the hardest. Heavily regulated. The drivers don't even know if they're qualified when they're applying for work. They don't know how to apply for jobs or find and identify the right jobs. And companies, they may not always know the best practices in order to actually get a driver in. Call them quickly, not a week later. There's a ton to be fixed. And so that's what got us into the industry. A year later, we had created a brand called Lanefinder. That's the product that you can see today.
Yeah, and I want to unpack that a little bit. Now, you mentioned Florida. We just spent some time together in Clearwater, Florida. That's your stomping grounds. We attended the Driver Employer Council of America, DECA, is their spring conference. It was great to finally meet you in person and just get to know not just more about you, but also more about Lanefinder. So I would like to want to make sure you talk about that. And, for everyone that I've talked to who's seen it or who's used it has been really impressed. So maybe can you share with the audience a bit more about Lanefinder and how you're helping both carrier and drivers?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and distinguish it between, let's say, Lanefinder 1.0 and what's about to hit the market. So in Lanefinder 1.0, we could clearly see the pain points that recruiters had. You ask any truck driver recruiter, they're always answering the same questions. Yes, you can bring your dog, or you're going to get 2 weekends home per month. It's, these many moving violations. So it tends to be the same conversation over and over. And when we were looking at that, we said, well, what if we could just take all that information up front? And that way, drivers can actually filter on all these things. So if you look from an outside perspective, looking into the trucking industry, a truck driver is a truck driver. But we know there's 1,000 different ways of being a truck driver. What kind of hauls where are you going to be running? What size company are you comfortable working with, et cetera, et cetera. So in Lanefinder 1.0, we addressed all that. So you go there today, it's still up, that site, and you can go in, you can filter on anything. There's 9,500 carriers that have accounts on Lanefinder today. And we processed about 200,000 driver applications in that platform. Now, going forward, it's going to be a little bit different.
From an entrepreneurial standpoint, you are all about, growth, expansion. When we talked in Clearwater, you shared a little bit about some of those plans for growth and expansion. Could you share, are you raising any capital where maybe some other trucking industry stakeholders, might have an opportunity of owning a piece of what you've built?
When we took a look at what we had about a year ago now, we took a look at the platform that we had. And we said, with everything that's going on with AI and the way that people are going to be searching going forward is going to be fundamentally different in the future. So sometimes there are these technology shifts that happen, which create a ton of opportunity in the market. If you remember when e-commerce started up, that was a major challenge for the entire retail industry. And what we see is that search, Google, job sites, et cetera, AI is going to be to them basically what e-commerce was to retail. And so just knowing that, we said, you know what? We're going to do something completely different for our search experience going forward. And leading with AI and AI agent structure, we're going to be able to dive into the future in a way that nobody else has started to do as far as we know it. And to do that, we're launching Lanefinder Connect. And Lanefinder Connect is that conversational AI. We're not limited to a set amount of filters drivers can use. So without going too deep into that, yes, for Lanefinder Connect now, we have an open funding round. And as opposed to what you would typically do, we're actually crowdfunding to be able to be a part of Lanefinder Connect. So the future looks bright. And the reason we wanted to do that is to really invite champions of the industry to be a part of this journey so that we're able to build the absolute best platform that has ever been built out there. And in order to do that, we want to do that together with the trucking industry and community. So yeah, it was great, by the way, being at DECA last week and meeting a lot of those industry heroes.
Yeah, well, and so I think, first of all, I think the idea of crowdfunding is genius. And I've had thought of that myself and approached that with Driver Reach early on. And I just didn't know how to do it. And maybe it's come a long way, even in, the last 5, 6 years or 7 years. And it seemed like it was maybe an expensive thing. But I think, to your point, it is so valuable when you can have access to industry stakeholders who want to own something, who want to be a part of something, who want maybe even some input and being able to help. And yeah, they're going to be your biggest champions. It's great. And especially in an industry like this, where as big as it is, it's close and it's tight. I'm excited. I think it's genius.
What excites me there, Jeremy, just to follow on that is, you ask any company, what is your number one pain point? And it is, of course, having drivers in the truck. Now, once they have their professional drivers in there that are a good match and they're going to stay there for a long time, then obviously companies have different problems. But you're always going to have that number one issue. Are my trucks running? And today, a lot of times that's outside of the company's fate. They have no control over it in terms of they don't own the job platforms that are out there. Everyone's in the hands of those major job platforms, trying to outspend one another and, trying the latest trends in, okay, well, how do I get somebody to click on my job? How can I switch this paragraph around? Why not be a part of the solution and help build it together and take that number one spot?
I love that. And, I've been in the industry over 20 years, always around the driver recruiting life cycle. I also, embraced technology, recognizing how deficient this industry was. And one thing I've noticed, especially the last several years, is just how quickly technology is evolving, even in trucking. We were about 11 minutes into this conversation when you first, said the word AI. AI is huge. It's massive. It's groundbreaking. And I know we're just tip of the iceberg. How do you view that continual evolution, whereas we continue to evolve from a technology standpoint? And what are you doing to stay in lockstep with it? If not even, it seems like you're slightly ahead.
What we want to accomplish now with Lanefinder Connect, it's being that number one platform for drivers. They can do things with Lanefinder Connect that it hasn't been technically available before. Same thing with carriers. To where we're going to be able to lift such a burden from them to where you're not going to have a whole infrastructure in place in order to be efficient at hiring drivers when you have AI agents lifting a lot of that heavy work for you so that your recruiters can focus on what they do best. For us, this has been such an opportunity to actually be able to execute all of the great ideas that weren't valid to go after a year ago even. And so now that the technology is there, our thought processes have been there since a long time ago. We're ready to execute quickly on all those ideas. But to your question there, I think it also has to do a lot with bold decisions. We have invested heavily in, the Lanefinder original platform that was invested heavily in. A lot of brain power has gone in there and building that system out to what it is today. You ask me, I believe that the 1.0 Lanefinder platform is by far superior to any other job platform out there. My opinion, absolutely biased, but from a technology standpoint, that's how we feel. And I know I had this discussion with you just a few days ago. I mentioned the word kill your darlings. Killing your darlings. We see what we have, but we also see how much bigger the opportunity is, how many more problems we're able to solve. So it's having that customer focus. Are we able to execute on the ultimate vision with yesterday's technology? No, we're not. Can we do it with tomorrow's technology? Absolutely. So we're always looking at what can we do to improve.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, being in the industry, and I love trucking. It's as I said earlier, it's as big as it is. It's really tight, and when you're all in and you embrace it, like I have for 20 plus years, I built some amazing relationships. They're priceless to me. And so that said, though, you also recognize that this industry has a lot of opportunity for improvement when you look out across the landscape at other more innovative or progressive industries, which is a great place to be because it's almost like you're from the future. You're really just seeing what others in the present are doing, but that's how far behind, we've been, it seems. So I mentioned about the relationships and stuff that I've been able to build. What's your experience been since you are focused in this industry? You have a dynamic personality. It's easy, as I said earlier, easy to talk to, easy to get along with. Are you building some of those types of relationships too? Are you finding that easy for you?
Absolutely. I think one thing that strikes me, even though a lot of the relationships that have been built so far over the years have been digital like this, and since COVID, it's been a lot easier to connect this way. But being able to get together, in events like we did have at the DACA conference and at the Mats show, the Florida trucking show, we were there a couple of weeks ago. We had drivers getting to take the Lanefinder Connect platform, which is still in beta. So they have to sign up for the wait list. It's not official yet, but definitely, just being able to connect with them. What I'll do for fun, Jeremy, is as soon as we have something new in the product that comes out, right? I'll be talking to the team. They'll say, Mats, go hunt. And then I'll drive down to the nearest truck stop that we have, and I'll put it immediately in the hands of the drivers. And I'll just stand back and I'll look at them just to kind of see their reactions. Do they get it? Are they excited about it? And, that to me was something I wasn't able to do when I was living abroad. And so, that's just massive for me. So building the relationships, getting to meet you. I mean, we had a great time a few days ago. It was such a pleasure to be able to do that, and with the drivers for sure.
I do want to switch gears because, speaking of drivers, this is obviously, you're familiar with Project 61, which is a nonprofit venture that I kicked off late last year. It's something I'm really passionate about. 61, the reference to that number being that is the average life expectancy of a CDL driver, which is just entirely unacceptable in my opinion. And Project 61 is the sponsor of a new segment of the show. And so this is where I ask a question related to the health and wellness of the industry. And once again, the industry health segment is sponsored by Project 61. And since I'm talking to someone who lived abroad, as you said, I think it makes sense to ask, since nutrition is such an important part of the pie here, no pun intended with pie, but how is the quality of food in the U.S. different from other advanced nations?
I mean, I could probably give a lengthy response to that, but I like to talk in stories. So one of the things that has struck me and that first comes to mind is my wife. She is baking bread all the time. She never used to do that, but for fun, absolutely on the weekends. But now it's almost like a constant everyday thing. And the reason why is once we got here last summer, we got all moved in and everything, and we bought some hot dogs. During summer, we had some hot dog buns, whatnot. Last week, I open up the cabinets and I see the same packet of hot dog buns. And I smell it, and it smells so good, Jeremy. I'm telling you, I wanted to eat it, but then I also knew it had a few months of shelf life that is living in there. And so that's one of the things. There's so many additives just to feel good. We've kind of rearranged the things that we would typically get that we can't find good substitutions for here. And that's also one of the things I mentioned that, we were taking the demo of the beta version so drivers could test it out themselves at the Florida trucking show. And, we let it rip. We don't just want to be a part of their life for the job search. We want to be an assistant, like a best friend in their pocket. So they can ask our AI anything that's trucking related. So for instance, hey, create me a training regimen, for 5 out of 7 days of the week. I don't want it to take more than 15 minutes at a time, or this is what I have, snap a picture. This is what I've got on my fridge. What can I make that's healthy? Throw me up a recipe I can make in my air fryer, stuff like that. So we're big on health. I love what's happening at Project 61. It's so important. And I think that the industry needs to highlight that a lot more. At the end of the day, it's about knowledge. How do we keep that up?
Certainly awareness and knowledge. And then at the end of the day, we need the behavior to change. Don't eat that hot dog bun that's probably, got full of preservatives over a year. It's been sitting out, not even frozen or refrigerated or anything. So yeah, that's insane. And I know that there's a lot of talk about additives. I know that there's ingredients that they're illegal in Europe and other countries, while in here, like, that's okay. Why is it illegal? Because it has proven health consequences, but they're like, that's fine. We'll give it lots of it in America for cheap. It's the standard American diet. Why are we where we are? It's because of those types of things. So yeah, I appreciated your perspective. Now, I told you early at the very beginning that I'd circle back to the question about a book. So to close out, first of all, you an early member of the Trucking Industry Book Club that I formed in January of this year. So thank you for being a participant there. It's fun to see that group grow and how we're selecting books to read. It's a lot of fun. And sometimes I'm reading a book that I might not have selected, but that's okay. That's a crowdfunding way to select books.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the question is, do you have a specific book that's been particularly impactful to you that you can share with the audience?
I was thinking long and hard during this interview, which one? I mean, there's so many good books, and it's when I say a book, is that going to be attached to me? Like that's the number one. But I do have a book, and it's a shameless plug because it's actually the author is somebody that I know very, very well, a close friend of mine, Matthew Kolinsky, serial entrepreneur, just like myself, yourself. He wrote a book that's called Work, Passion, Life Balance. And again, shameless plug, but this book is connected deeply with myself because sometimes as entrepreneurs and building product and being passionate about that, sometimes it can feel like work takes importance or precedence over everything else. And our personal desire to succeed professionally can sometimes push us to set aside our own well-being. This book talks a lot about the concept of zones of efficiency. It doesn't distinguish to trying to live up to expectations of having a work life and then having your life, work-life balance. This is actually a way to mend the two together because what if work is your passion also? How do you fit that into life at the same time? So that book has had a great impact on me. I definitely think that for anybody that often asks themselves, how am I going to find time to do this or that or squeeze that in? I think that you should definitely go pick up that book and read it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll add that to my Goodreads list, and I can relate. It's always important. That balance is really important, and always having that perspective. You don't want that to get skewed. Make sure that your priorities are in line. Matt, thank you so much for joining me. Always look forward to seeing you, and I hope to see you again at some upcoming industry events.
I look forward to it, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And thank you for taking the higher road with me. Once again, special thanks to the sponsors of the show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.